Welcome back to Reds Roundup. In this video, we're going to be looking at the election, the 2020 election, and how that will affect the stock market, your portfolio, and what the market is and isn't pricing in right now. Let's get right into it. Here I have pulled up the predictit.com website. So Predictit is a betting market where you can go and look at a variety of different political or otherwise governmental events and make predictions or bets on the outcomes of those events and look at where the market, the betting market, is setting the prices. So just like in sports betting, there's a line set in sports betting. You can see that here for the political betting. This is essentially the line. So every number that you see here could be translated into the odds of the candidate. This is the presidential election map we're looking at here. We'll look at the Senate in a minute. But this is the odds that a candidate will win that given area. So as a whole, for the United States, we can look at those odds too, but I find it pretty important to look at the individual states too. So we see that Biden is being given a slight edge in terms of electoral votes as of right now, prospective electoral votes, whereas Trump is lagging a little bit. But the election is nowhere near guaranteed for either candidate. A lot of people are saying that the election is guaranteed for Biden. However, the betting markets would say otherwise. It's pretty neck and neck if you think about it. And if you look at some of the key swing states here, Florida, leaning Trump, but trending towards Biden right now. That when I say trending, you see that little 3-cent sign there. That means the odds have gone down by around 3% recently. And let's look at the national. So the national average, or not average, the national market says that Biden is being given a 62% chance to win the election, whereas Trump is at 41%. This is much different than the polls, and we're going to find that out soon. But when we look at some of these key swing states, we find that it's still very possible for a Donald Trump presidency in the second term. We see states like Iowa, Trump's winning. Ohio, Trump is winning again. Even Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the states that were very key to his 2016 victory, are not leaning towards Trump, but he still has a fair chance, a 30% chance, and almost 40% chance there in Pennsylvania. We look at Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, those states, the southern states that sometimes lean Democrat. Trump still is in the lead there. So if he can capture those states, as well as Arizona, if he could flip Arizona from Biden in this, he'd be in a really good place to take those electoral votes, because those are the electoral votes that are making up the edge. If he can capture those, he can win the election. Let's take a look at the Senate map right now. And we're going to see that the Senate is really a toss-up. And I want to focus on two states here, Iowa and North Carolina. So these two states are pretty much a toss-up. All the other ones are fairly regular and predictable. But these two states, if the Democrats win them or if the Republicans win them, that will dictate who is in in control of the Senate, And that's going to be important, because if you have a Democratic Senate and a Republican president, there's going to be much conflict in terms of getting legislation done. But if they're of the same party, then things are going to go through much quicker. And that's going to be how it is. Let's take a look at one other thing here. I want to look at one race in particular that I think is important, and that is this Georgia race. Looking at this Georgia race, if the Republicans can't win Georgia, and they can't win North Carolina, and they can't win Iowa, the Democrats win the presidency, the Democrats are going to have a full control of the House and the Senate, and they're going to be able to pump out as much legislation as they want, including stimulus packages. Right now, that's the big talking point that everybody wants to know about is what's going on with the stimulus package nobody really knows. Will the Democrats get one through? Will the Republicans get one through? Odds are the Democrats will get a bigger one through if they have a clean sweep, meaning they have the House, Senate, and executive, the presidency. So if that happens, that would probably be good for many stocks that are in debt right now that would receive the stimulus, such as airlines, even though I personally don't believe that's the right thing to do. I have other videos on that. We see here that in that situation, that would be good for those highly leveraged stocks. Now I want to take a look at comparing this map to the pollsters map and seeing how it differs. So the pollsters and the betting markets are predicting very different things, especially in terms of presidential election, and I'm going to tell you why that is. On this site, I have pulled up 5/38/2020. So this is one of the most reputable pollster sites out there. I think it's done in part with Nate Silver. He's one of the top pollsters in the country. He knows what he's talking about in terms of the statistics and the actual numbers and data with the election out of all the pollsters, most likely. So here we see that in terms of a Trump win, we're sitting at a 12% chance, and in terms of a Biden win, it's an 88% chance. Now, if we think back to what we just saw with the betting markets pricing Trump at a 40% chance and a Biden at a 60-some% chance, this is very different. Trump is almost 10%, and he was in the betting markets at 40. So that's a difference of 30%. How can we as investors sort of make sense of that difference? How is it likely to change, and what's the likely outcome of the election going to be in terms of odds? And we're going to look through some of these different points here because he has a great website pulled up. We have the different regressions that he did 40,000 times to see who won and by how much. We see it's mostly skewed towards a Biden victory here. Let's scroll down. Again, we see that same thing. And here we see some of the swing states. So on the betting market, we saw that Trump was favored to win Iowa, but on the pollsters thing, we see that Iowa is actually Democratic. So this is part of it. Georgia as well, North Carolina, these states were all supposed to be Republican, but in the pollsters, they are Democrat, and as well as Florida. So if we just add these ones back, it's a very close race. It's very close. And it's really going to come down to these swing states that are pretty much neck and neck and within a margin of error. Moving on, we see how the chances of winning has progressed throughout the summer and into the fall that we're in now. And we see that Trump at one point, according to the pollsters, was only at 32%. That's not very high. The betting markets are still much higher than that, and Trump is trending downwards towards 10%. And I'd be surprised if on election day it was sitting at 90%, 10%. But as we know from 2016, strange outcomes are still possible. We know that. We know that strange outcomes are still possible. Here's my thought for how we can sort of make sense of what the difference is between these two numbers. I've looked at different surveys from money managers, and a lot of the money managers in the stock market as a whole, I would assume, is pricing in more closely to what the betting markets are saying. So if you think that there's a greater than 40% chance of Trump winning, I would say you're bullish on Trump winning compared to the market. But if you think there's less than a 40% chance of Trump winning, I would say you're bearish on Trump winning compared to the market. So that's going to be an interesting thing when we look at industries like energy, healthcare, even pharmaceuticals, to see how they respond to a Trump or a Biden victory, or forbid that we have a split election, which I'm going to show you here. The odds of an election that doesn't get solved right on election night is probably bigger than you might think. We're going to scroll down here to which day the presidential election will be called. And this is going to be important because if it's the same night, then we know that most likely there isn't a split election. But if the election is not called on the same day, then we know that it's probably going to be more contested and there's going to be market volatility. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding it. We're just going to, by trading volume all time. Here I have pulled up the outcome timing of the presidential election. And we can see here there's fairly good odds, actually, that the election is called later than even December 4th, which is the day after. So November 3rd, people vote. November 4th, that's when most people, or the greatest number of people, think the election would be called. But then if we look through November 5th through even December, there's still a very good chance that the election could be called then. Let's take a look at the trend lines for this. It was November 4th. November 3rd took the lead for a little bit, but now November 4th is kind of running away with it. But don't forget, if we enter into one of these situations where the election isn't being called until a week, 2 weeks, even a month later, that's going to be a very bad thing for stocks as a whole. We're going to see a lot of market volatility, and you can take advantage of that by buying, but it's also going to be hard to hold. And I'm just warning you, we could see lots of volatility. If we see this happen, the election run on 1, 2, even 3 weeks, that's going to be very stressful for the country as a whole. Who's to say we don't see more riots or social unrest take place that even more destabilizes things? And I would assume that that would not be favorable for stocks. And I would assume that more stimulus would not be getting passed if there is a contested election. I don't think the two parties would be willing to work together so much. So if I am an investor, I'm not going to discount the probability of something bad happening and the election going into a crazy scenario. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this beneficial. Subscribe if you want to see more. Go watch some of my other videos to get a better feel for the channel too. Thanks.